Hey ladies, so it is Manny Monday, so I'm going to take a break from labeling all of my swatches and do a little like tutorial-ish video about a few things that people had been asking to see in the group. First is a little trick that I've been doing and people asked me about what I do when a nail pops off. So this one popped off whole. These Dip Base Clear have been on for like 3 weeks, so this one actually finally popped off. It's the first one to do so. But I figured I'd quickly show you guys what I do when I have a nail that pops off like this. And I do this if it's the whole piece, like base and all, to my natural nail, or I do it if it's just the color, as long as it's whole and pops off in one big piece. With my natural nail, this is where it popped off. This one I removed to show the next thing I'm going to show you guys. But this one popped off. It's got like glue still there and things like that. I leave that as is, because if you think about it, this is like the roughest your nail will be, and it doesn't do anything to your actual nail. It's like rough up instead of rough down. But I throw a little bond on just to dry it out, because often if it's popped off, I've touched all over it. I've done a whole bunch of things that probably put oils and things on it. Like I was just showing you and touching it and everything. So then the nail itself, depending on what it looks like in here, I will throw like bond on the inside of this, but I think we're gonna do it anyway, just because, you know, why not? I've been touching all over that too, you know? So I let all of the bond, double dip, step 1, bond, dry. And then I take my dip base, step 2. Sorry, I'm trying to see around my camera as well. And I just apply that on the whole nail, like that. And then I take my whole piece and I just pop it back on there where it was, and I push down with a lot of pressure. Sorry if that was a little off camera, trying to see around it. But I just hold that until the base dries so that it adheres to the dip nail and my natural nail too. And then once it's dry, which usually doesn't take very long, I kind of flip my nail over and like push on the pad of my finger, because what tends to happen with this is, at least for me, the glue doesn't spread this way on my cuticle when I do this. It spreads this way underneath here and can sometimes glue, like see right here. I don't know if the camera will pick that up. It glued this tiny piece of my skin. So when I pushed on it, it pulled apart. And that's kind of how you can tell that the base underneath is definitely dry now. and that will stay on until I'm ready to take it off probably. But I just pop everything back on when that happens and it pops off, because as long as it's the full nail, it's just fine. Plus, like, if it pops off like that and you notice any water's gotten under there or anything like that, you can deal with it and then glue the thing back on too. Same thing with color. If your peel base pops and your whole color comes off, you just throw peel base back on top, let it dry, the dip base, and then hold the color down. The next time that happens, I'll take a quick video too, if you guys want to see it. But yeah, so that's how I just quick throw a nail that pops off back on. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to cover real quick, because some group members were asking about it, is how I prep from my natural nail, adding tips, and going through to the end of like my base dip here. I'm going to do what I do normally, but some of those things are probably not as beginner friendly. Sorry, my camera's focus keeps changing. Are not as beginner friendly as like a first time doing it, like first couple times doing it. So I'll mention like alternatives if you A, don't have what I have, or B, are leery or nervous about doing what I'm doing. So I kind of wash my hands all the time, so I don't really worry about washing my hands right before I start. Though some people say that's a good tip to keep your mani lasting longer. So if you wanted to wash with like Dawn dish soap before you start, that's a beneficial thing, I guess. But I don't personally do it. Alright, so I start off with my bare nail, and I push back my cuticles. I like this metal one I got in a nail tool kit I bought off Amazon. I don't remember which one it was. I think that, I think it came with my nail clips, to be perfectly honest. But I just kind of like push back. There's not much to push back because I've had dips on. I just removed this to show you guys. But I push back all of like the visible cuticle with this thing. I try not to get too much into like the invisible cuticle with this, because it is metal, and if you're not careful, you can put cuts on your finger, etc., and they don't feel good. I did it to this pinky a while back. I think it's finally healed though. I had a little cut right here for a long time because I got a little too zealous with that. If you don't have one of those, you can always use like your orange stick flat end and push back. The only reason I don't is because I like to use this when I'm doing my cleanup and stuff, so I can sometimes have like residue and things on it, so it doesn't always work as good. After I push back my cuticle, I buff my nail off with one of these orange buffers because I don't want to buff too much of the layer of my nail, because I don't want thinning, because my nails are already thin enough and super obnoxiously thin at that. So I do a little buff, and then this is partially what I'm talking about. I have one of these electric e-files from Melody Susie. This one's a Stacy. And I use this little round, if I can get it to focus, it's just a little round like ball end. On the lowest setting for my e-file, and I get the invisible cuticle and any like really excess cuticle, because I tend to have a lot of excess here on the side. You can see where it's kind of been buffed off already from previous applications. But I use this on the lowest setting to make sure that all that invisible cuticle is gone. So I just turn this on. I kind of play with it a little, turning it on and then turning it all the way down till it shuts off and then tipping it back, just to make sure that I get it on the lowest setting for real, not just thinking it's low enough. Then I kind of just lightly, barely touch my nail with it and get all of that invisible cuticle that is a nightmare for all of us for lifting off. And it takes like a couple seconds with that, because it's amazing. I love that e-file so much. They're on sale currently if y'all are interested. But yeah, so buff all that off. Actually got just a tiny bit more there. Again, I try to touch my nail as little as possible with it, so it's only taking the cuticle, because I don't know if you can really tell, but like, do you see how thin my nails are? That is not from dipping and filing and things. Like, that's literally how thin my nails are on a regular day after years of not doing anything to them. Like, they're awful. So I get the cuticle off, and then I have really, really oily nail beds, like really bad. So this is going to be excessive for most people. I put on some of this Bond, and I let that dry. We're actually gonna pop this open so it's ready. So I let that dry, and then I go in and apply another thin little layer of Bond. I don't know if the camera will really pick it up, but like, do you see how my nails changed color now and not after the first one? Because my nail wasn't dehydrated from the first application. It's dehydrated now. I actually do 3 applications, because then once I've done the first 2, I go through nail by nail. So like, I would do, like, since I'm doing this one, I put an application on the first finger, index, I let that dry. I'm ahead of myself here, sorry. I add my dip base to my entire nail, and then pop my tip on there. probably just screwed this up a little bit because I got ahead of myself. I usually take the time to buff out my tip. We'll just buff that layer of dip base off if it's dry, which it probably will be. And then I throw a little bit of the dip bond inside my tip so that it is rough and dried out like my tip or like my finger is, and then I would put it on. I think I'm gonna need to, yeah, put another layer of dip base on there. I always put my tips on, like you'll notice a little bit, I tend to do my nails looking this way at them. I always do my tips this direction because I want them to look straight on my finger this way. Whereas when I flip them this way, I don't necessarily care how straight they look in that orientation. And the reason I do that is because I don't know if you can really tell, but like my fingers kind of curve a little. So my fingers aren't straight, and then my nails are not straight. So I want my nail to be straight to my finger because then it looks right. Because if I put this nail on like straight, it would have been crooked to my finger. Joys of funky fingers, I guess. But so then once your tip is on, which I totally almost forgot to do because I'm having one of those days. Once my tip's on, I take my buffer back out and I just buff the entire thing. And I do this with these full coverage tips, but I also do it with the regular just on your tips. And this I like buff the snot out of because it's not my real nail and it's not gonna like cause any issues if it's buffed to high heaven. So then that's all buffed and nice and ready, right? But I go back in with my bond one more time. And I just put it on the whole kit and caboodle here. And I'll let that dry. And you'll notice actually like the color that these are is not because I used white dip or anything like that. It's literally like you can see the discoloration of the tip from buffing and dehydrating, because then I go in here with my tip and I just do a little bit here on the tip and I dip it in my clear. And then we brush it off. how you ladies apply your liquids, but I tend to face my nail toward me so that I can like really see, like see how I just got that on the edge there? If I was facing it this way, I would be much less likely to have seen that. At least I would have been. I would have noticed. Okay. And then go through here one last time. Let me just put it on the whole nail. I try to stay very clear of my cuticles so that when I dip, the dip powder doesn't go all the way up to the cuticle. And then, I don't know if the camera can really see, but you'll see, like, I've got, oh, I'm out of frame here, sorry. I don't know if the camera can see, but you'll see I've got a little bit of powder on my finger here where the dip went to the side. I actually take my cuticle snippers and I use the corner to kind of push that until one of the edges pops up, and then it just pops off. You could probably do this with an orange stick too. I don't know, I just feel like I have more control and it gets done quicker if I do it this way. I think especially because once I do that and scrape that off, if I have like weird like unevenness to my skin there, sorry, I'm off frame again. If I have weird unevenness to my skin there, I kind of just snip it, just like the tiniest like layer, like you would your cuticle, to get rid of that extra that's on the side. And then immediately after that, I snip off like extra dip on the side. So like I just have one tool in my hand for a few minutes and it goes quicker. And then my cuticle's actually pretty clean. But I would take my orange stick and like go through here, like scrape off any extra around this here. And then after that, I use my activator make sure I get everywhere. And then, if it needs buffing, which really this one does not, I would buff it. I feel like typically with clear, the most you need is this little orange buff block. You don't really need anything more excessive than that. If I'm doing any shaping, I use one of these emery board type things and shape the end. I like the tips that I have currently because they're like my favorite shape, so I don't really have to do anything to them in that regard. So then I put activator on a second time once all the buffing is done. And then wait a little bit for it to kind of dry. And then I take non-acetone nail polish remover, which I have laying around because of previously doing nail polish and stuff, and I kind of just wipe it down real quick to make sure that this next step doesn't go horribly awry with the top coat. I try to keep that to like as few swipes and as little of the nail polish remover as possible, just because even though it's not acetone, I don't want to risk accidentally softening my dip. And then I just go through here with, oh, my brush is hard. Go figure. Must have done that when I was doing swatches. I put a few swipes on there. And I let that dry. See, even I harden my top coats occasionally. If I'm not paying enough attention or whatever, it happens. That's why brush saver is amazing and super important. Then once that first coat's dry, I usually will go back in with a quick swipe of a second top coat. When your brush is hard, this is not an intelligent, it's not that it's not intelligent, it's not the smartest practice to do this when your brush is hard, but I'm trying to like throw this on here and get to the next little piece for you guys, and this is going to be covered up, so I'm not too worried about what it looks like. This is like the real risk when your brush is hard, is potentially getting top coat up here. On your finger and cuticles and things. Oh yeah, let's put that in the brush saver. Okay. So yeah, that's how I put from my natural nail, my tip, to my dip base. And then usually I will throw cuticle oil on at this point. because I'm not doing any more of the process once I get to this point usually, because I need to prep and plan and do all the things for getting out my colors and like all this stuff. So there's usually a bit of time between now and putting the color on. If you notice, like, even though like my brush was hard and I should not have put it on like that, it pretty much self-leveled and I don't have any dips or bumps. I don't recommend using a hard brush to put your stuff on though. Probably not the best practice. So yeah, that's my base that I put on. I'm actually going to do the next piece, which is I'm going to show you guys how I do my fills, because a couple of these kind of need it, in between popping off my color. And then after that, I will show you the peel base stuff. Okay, so we're gonna do the things for a fill. So I keep this round one in my Melody Susie. I'll actually just show you guys this. So this is the base for the Melody Susie drill that I have. Of course, it's not going to show you the name on the thing right now. It says Melody Susie on there. This is the base for it, and it's got this little hole in it. I usually leave this bit right in my e-file, and I just kind of like stick this in here and leave it on my table with these other bits in the back. Mainly I do that because I use this little round bit the most often for my cuticles and things like that. And it's usually the first bit that I use, because when I do my fills, I take this little baby and I turn it on to its lowest setting, and I go through and I just kind of lightly touch my cuticle line to get any excess cuticle that has been creeping in while I've had my dip nails on. I do the lowest setting and I barely touch it because I don't want to put big cuts and things in my cuticle, because those aren't cute. They happen to everyone occasionally, but they are not anything any of us wants on a regular basis. You'll see, like, you'll start to see, there's like a sheet, maybe, my camera's down. There's like a sheet that starts to get created. And then eventually, there, it falls off. And it's this little cuticle, like, sheet that falls off there. And I just kind of lightly go over all of my cuticles like that, right? Don't worry, I won't make you watch all of them. I'm just going back through this one so you can see it again. See the sheets that, maybe, the sheets that are like popping off. I just go through and gently, barely touching, and they all kind of fell off. So I'm going to turn this off for a second. So then the cuticles all get kind of cleaned up, and I do that first because I want to not risk getting too close to the cuticle again after this. So that whole cuticle line gets all cleaned up, which I actually need to go through a tiny bit more on this one, but I clean all that up. And then on here you'll see like places that were lifting. When I pop my color, if there's pieces that are lifting off the base, they kind of almost take care of themselves for me. If there's any that's not like broke off completely, I like go back through and clip with this thing. But they kind of just break themselves off, the lifting parts, when I pop my color, which is super handy. But if there's any lifting, I clip with the clippers and get all that off, and then I have all this space back here, right? Can't see so well around my camera. So we get all this extra cuticle that's just been growing while your nail grows, even though you have dip on. And just kind of lightly, barely touch it, and it all comes off. Yeah. Fun stuff. I do not want to injure myself on here, but if you were to be too heavy-handed with this, it would not be good. We'll just leave it at that. So if you don't have a drill, or you are concerned and skittish about doing that, you can actually take this baby on the edge and go through and just set your edge in that space between the grow out and your cuticle and kind of just rub it. Let's see if we can, if you just kind of rub it, it will do the same thing. It probably just won't be quite as, it probably just won't be quite as clean and complete. But you can do that too. And as long as you're like not super rough and like trying to get it done really fast, you shouldn't end up with any marks or digs in your cuticle. I prefer the other because, like I said, it gets cleaner lines and things, and then I know I haven't left any behind. Okay, so then after I've used this baby to do that, and of course it doesn't want to come out today. There we go. I get out this pretty little rounded bit and pop her in there. I turn that on. Not too fast, but it doesn't have to be the lowest setting. Pop that on, and I take and I like lightly buff this, not the natural nail, but the back of the dip base. Keep your drill moving, because if you don't, you risk doing that burn thing to your finger, and it really doesn't feel good. And the reason I use the rounded one like this for this is because I don't want to risk nicking my cuticle or my natural nail if I can help it. And then I take it sideways and I just kind of buff off all the shiny. Oops. I use this for this because I'm not trying to take like a ton of thickness off, and I'm not trying to change the shape of the apex at all. I literally just want to make this ridge here less ridgy. I also usually do this over a dust collector so that all this dust is not in the air and or all over my table. Now I don't know if you can really see on the camera, but now versus like these ones where it's like pretty steep, and this one that's all jagged from the missing parts, this one's pretty like smooth, straight down, and like this blends, right? Pretty thin still. I have super oily nail beds, so you might not need to do this. I do. I take my Bond, step 1, I kind of just dab it back here on the natural nail. So that back little piece there dries out so that it's not causing lifting from the oiliness of my nails, right? You might see on camera, maybe, sort of, I don't know. This clear is like contaminated. There's not contaminated. There's glitter and things in it, and colors and whatnot. That's why it's my base clear. So if you see weird stuff in there, it's just because it's Alright, and then I take my base and I kind of push it back toward the cuticle. I just cover this whole thing now. And then I dip it. Of course I missed a little bit, because that happens from time to time. I don't get too stressed if I miss, like, see, I don't know if you can see this tiny little section here where it's like shiny and not powdery. I don't freak out too much when it's clear and that happens, because clear is so thin in the first place that I don't really stress if I go with clear another time. Like, I don't stress about thickness if I have to go over with a second clear. Okay, so then that is the fill. You'll see, maybe, I don't know, camera things. The clear here is different color than the clear out here, but that's only because this is where my tip is, and that's my natural nail color under there. You can go through and clean up with your orange stick. I don't really need to do that, but I do need to take these guys and snip this tiny little chunk off. There. So then that is that nail filled. We throw some activator on here. Then if you need to buff or do any shaping or anything, you would do that now. I find really my clear doesn't ever need that. It's usually pretty smooth, like even when it applies. On top of color, like sometimes I need to do more buffing because I'm doing it on top of something and like glitters and things like that, but if I'm only doing the clear part, it usually doesn't need. Okay. So then go through with it again, let it dry. I think this, if I'm being honest, I think this is why my lifting takes care of itself, because at this point I have a tip and I have natural nail. So if any of this natural nail clear lifts before my next color pop off and things, that's just gonna like kind of pop off too, I feel like, because my nails are super oily and all those types of things. It just kind of handles itself. I don't have to do too much clipping. Going through with my non-acetone nail polish remover wipe. We're gonna let that dry. Oh, that's my brush saver. Grabbing the wrong bottle is not helpful. But yeah, so then once that nail polish remover stuff has dried off, then we can go through and put our top coat on. Which clearly this brush did not sit in my top coat long enough because it's acting funny. Anyway, I know, so fun facts that I have learned from playing around in experience here in the couple months I've been dipping. I know a lot of people complain about the top coats and say, like, top coat is super finicky and I have such a hard time, da 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 da. It's not your top coat that is really, like, the thing, right? It's the activator. So different brand top coats that are quote unquote easier to work with, it's not that their top coat's better, it's that their activator isn't as strong. So Double Dip has a very strong activator because they want to make sure that our nails are hard and gonna last us, right? So because the activator is so good, if you're not super careful, then your top coat will have issues and you'll have a few struggles, but not because the top coat's bad. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm babbling away at nothing. Sometimes, like, I just don't make sense. I can't find the right words for my brain, and then I think that I don't make any sense at all. But usually, the response I get is that, oh no, you made perfect sense. This one side went very awry. And it's not the top coat's fault, it's because I put a different brush in there and didn't let it sit in the liquid long enough. So it was acting weird and doing weird things. User error. See, even I do it. It happens. No big deal. We just buff it off. We pull out our backup top coat. Because that is a brilliant plan to have a backup and keep it handy. And we just use that. Put that on. I try to make sure that my top coat layers are like really thin so they dry right, but sometimes even I can't manage it. But so this is a brand new tip I put on, you guys watched, and this is a filled one, right? And they don't really look different, do they? They basically look very much the same with more grow out on this one, right? Because I use full coverage tips, let's try already. Because I use full coverage tips, a new tip versus a fill really isn't any different. because I only have this little bit when I put it on brand new, and I only have like a little bit of grow out when I fill it. These have been on, the not new ones have been on 3 weeks. So you can see, like, my nails, they just don't grow. They grow very, very little. Hence the need for tips and dip and all the fun, wonderful things. But yeah, so that's that part, and filling and like all that fun stuff. And then we will do peel base. Okay, I bumped my camera because, you know, I'm famous for that. Do it all the time. And now, of course, it doesn't want to behave and sit where it's supposed to. That's fine, I guess. A little crooked, but what are we gonna do? There we go. Okay, so now for all the fun stuff and color. Let's see, what colors do we want to do? That is the question. How about so we've picked colors. Got all the fun stuff around, right? We're gonna do a glow mani. I've got most definitely, mixtape, and in the name of love. Those are gonna be the colors we do. So we're gonna do these two so I can show you guys. I take my peel base and I kind of just apply it over the whole nail like I would a nail polish, only just a tiny bit thinner than that. And I try to keep the peel base because I think it tries to self-level. I try to keep my nail pointed down. Same thing with the dip liquids. I try to always do my applications for that pointing my nail downward, not up, which is a bonus for doing it this orientation. One, I see it better. Two, it keeps my nail this way. Because I feel like if I'm putting it on this way, I tend to do this so I can see what I'm doing. Fun tips and tricks, right? Fun tips and tricks. Base. First to dry. La la la. Maybe I'll fast forward this part for you guys. Because waiting for paint to dry is not exactly fun or useful, is it? Let's move some stuff out of the way here. Okay. So, let's use this one first. Okay, and it's dry. So we're gonna apply. You might might notice, maybe, I don't know how easy it is to see on the camera, I don't go all the way back to my cuticle. I start like where my tip is and kind of come forward from there. I know that these glow powders are super sheer, so usually, typically, with most of my colors, I would do a clear cap and like, that would be it. But this is a very sheer color, so we're gonna try to push back just a little further toward the cuticle. I try to keep my cuticle space as thin as possible because it helps not to have lifting and things if your cuticle area is thin. Not your whole nail, just your cuticle area. If your whole nail's too thin, that can cause pop-off and lifting, which is really strange that it's like kind of counterintuitive. So then we're gonna put some clear on. So this is my nifty way that I do clear, okay? I have one of these recycler things. It's got a French tip top or whatever. I take the little scoop, pour my clear in there a little bit. Let's close this because this camera is making me concerned about bumbling and spilling things. Because it's right there, you know? Alright, so then I take my base and I apply it like so. And then I take and I pour clear all over this nail. I didn't have enough clear in there, so I'm actually going to dip it in there too. Alright, now the reason that I do that is because if you see here, there is no color from my nail in my clear. If I contaminate this whole jar, that's not very fun. If I contaminate a tiny bit of clear, pouring it over and having it, or brushing it off after I've poured over, I can throw that in my base clear that's got glitters and things in it that it's not supposed to. But then I keep this jar safe. The tips and tricks, man, the tips and tricks. Okay, so then you'll see, like, I don't really need to clean up my cuticle area, but I do have this little spot I need to clippy with the clippers. And I know you're not supposed to clip other things with cuticle clippers because you dull them. If you do, sorry, bumping things. I have little, I have one of those little stones that you use to sharpen, or not sharpen, but I guess sharpen, to, like, you buff your e-file bits with this little block, and it makes it so they are not more not down and like good at their job. Does that, am I making sense? It's like when you sharpen a knife on a block. It's like that, but it's this tiny little thing. I don't have it out, or I'd show you. I use it to sharpen my cuticle nippers back up if they start to get dull. But yeah, see, that is our glow color, most definitely. And we're gonna buff it a little just to make sure that it's smooth. So that our top coat is nice and shiny and pretty. When we put it on, so I'm doing singular nails here and just showing you like the steps. When I'm done, I will, I got weird hair stuff there. I'll talk a little bit about like how I put those steps together in terms of doing all of my nails for my whole mani, because I don't do it one nail at a time. Okay, so there's that. It's actually super pretty color. I really like that. Alright, so then we're going to go over here to this one. Actually, yeah, because it's done. We'll go right to this one. We're gonna not spill our peel base and not put that much peel base on our nail. Just gonna put that on there. Okay, so peel base is all dry now. We're actually gonna do a little extra here and show you guys how I do my French tips, because I'm actually starting to love doing those. Anyway, so put one color in the dippy tray, and I'm pretty sure this is basically the same concept as the double dip one. I already had this tray before they released theirs, so I don't have theirs yet. Okay. All the bits and pieces. All the bits and pieces here. Alright, so peel base is dry. We're going to come in with the dip base on the whole nail. Like so. And then we're gonna dip in here for our smile line, right? And then we're gonna pour over, oh, can't see me on camera, pour over I gotta be super quick with this because you'll notice my base started to dry, so I didn't get any on that little area there. So you gotta be kind of quick. Quick. So I'm gonna try to maneuver here a little better because part of the issue is I can't see around my camera. Alright. So I'm putting the dip base on. With my whole nail. Dipping into my smile line. Pouring over the rest. And quite frankly, sometimes I do a dip. Because sometimes it's just what you need to do. You need to be careful when you do that, like, dip in the second color, though, because you can contaminate your colors. Like, this one's got glitter in it, this one doesn't, so if I'm not careful, I could end up with glitter in my not glitter color. Okay. So, don't really need to clean my cuticle or anything, but we're gonna do another dip because firstly, these colors I'm using are sheer in the first place, but secondly, because it's not very opaque with the second color. There we go. Smile line. Okay. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. I usually pour. I'm gonna be really, really honest. I don't want to contaminate my colors, so I usually do the pour thing. With the camera and trying to work around it, that was proving to be obnoxiously difficult. So we're actually gonna close these up because I will be doing the rest of my mani until a little later. So there's no accidents in powder spells. Alright. So then we're going to go through. Put one last layer. Dip base on. And then pour our clear over. We don't have too much of the cuticle I need to worry about, but I need to go on the sides here because of trying to pour and it not working. Well, not that it wasn't working, but that my visual impairment made it not function the way it should. I should rephrase that. I'm not visually impaired normally. I mean the camera blocking my view when I say visual impairment here. There's that part. Okay. And then we've got the activator on there, so now we're going to buff. This one needs a little TLC because we did a pour over that ended up needing a dip because I couldn't see. This is really the magic of clear powder, because I just smoothed all that out and didn't really mess up my color at all. I'm actually not sure why my camera is making that color look so uneven, because it's not. So buff, activate again. Dry a second. Then again, like I said before, nail polish remover, non-acetone. I had it laying around because I used to paint my nails and I didn't like using acetone on my hands. So I'm gonna wipe this one down, this one down. And then pull out our top coat. Sometimes I take, after I wipe down, sorry, always and forever bumping the camera. Sometimes I take a dry one and wipe it off after the acetone-free nail polish remover, just so that I don't have any of that on there. And then put on our top coat. And we let that dry. And it ends up super, super shiny. Oops. Pick up some of these things here while I wait for that top coat to dry. Oops. Dropping things. Story of my life. I drop things all the time. Okay. I don't really think I need another top coat, honestly. And obviously, like, this French tip is thicker because I had to put more layers on there because of technical difficulties and user error. But, like, it really didn't end up being much thicker of a nail despite those extra layers. I think, yeah, my top coat is dry now. So, yeah, those are some things. And real quick, before I'm officially all done with this, things to note. Like, I just did, a couple fingers, right? I glued this one back on. I started from scratch at natural nail for this one. I filled this one and then did this. So like I did like nail by nail, right? When I'm doing my full mani, firstly, I always start with my dominant hand and put those nails on. So if I can make it work on this hand, I know that with my dominant hand, I can make it work on this hand, versus doing crazy, awesome nail arty stuff on this hand and then having it not work out trying to do it with this hand on this hand. If that makes sense. I'm just noticing how really sheer this color is and how I can still kind of see my cuticle line there from tip to space. Anyway, if I'm doing my whole set, I do all of my filling, right? All the buffing, all the filling. I use my dip base to do all of the dipping layers, activate everything, all my nails all at once, buff them all, activate again. I let them dry, I use the wipe, and then I go through and I top coat each of them all at the same time. That way I am less likely to contaminate my top coat. I typically only ever seem to contaminate my top coat when I'm doing swatches, because I only do a couple at a time, and it's not the same process for doing my nails. I also do all of my dip base applications, and then I put my dip base brush in my brush saver. I didn't this time in this video because I needed to save my top coat brush, but that goes in when I finish, while I'm activating and buffing and then activating again. By the time I'm done, it's ready to come out and go back in its dip base bottle, and then I do my top coat, and by the time I'm done with my top coat and ready to put my top coat brush in my brush saver, the brush saver brush has been back in the brush saver long enough that I can put it in my top coat and put my top coat brush in the brush saver. So yeah. I also, I top coat all 10 nails at the same time, not 5 and 5, which is why the brush saver brush is back in it long enough. So I would do all of my dip base on this nail, activate, right? All of my dip base on this nail, activate. Brush goes in after these 5 to the brush saver. Activating, buffing, all of the things for all 10 nails, and then the switching. So that's why the time length works. But yeah, if you guys have any questions at all, or want to see something else, or whatever, let me know and I will try to accommodate. Trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to remember to tell you guys. Oh, glow powders, right? The glows. Typically, you guys have seen in the group, I do stamping, and I use gel base and top so that I can stamp. Glow powders and gel top coats and things don't mix well. It makes some of them so they can't glow, or they don't glow well. So I did not do any of that this time. Alrighty, so that's it, I guess. I'll do some editing out to try to keep this video as short as possible and post it shortly so you guys can see, and hopefully it helps the ladies that were asking questions and wanted to see stuff. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.